Russia has struck cities across Ukraine during rush hour, killing civilians and destroying infrastructure in apparent revenge after President Vladimir Putin declared an explosion on the bridge to Crimea to be a terrorist attack. Cruise missiles tore into busy intersections, parks, and tourist sites in the center of downtown Kyiv on Monday morning with an intensity unseen even when Russian forces attempted to capture the capital early in the war. Explosions were also reported in Lviv, Ternopil, and Zhytomyr in Ukraine's west, Dnipro and Kremenchuk in central Ukraine, Zaporizhia in the south, and Kharkiv in the east. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said the rush hour attacks appear to have been deliberately timed to kill people. In Kyiv, the body of a man in jeans lay in a street at a major intersection, surrounded by flaming cars. In a park, a soldier cut through the clothes of a woman who lay in the grass to try to treat her wounds. Two other women were bleeding nearby. A huge crater gaped next to a children's playground in a central Kyiv park. The remains of an apparent missile were buried, smoking in the mud. More volleys of missiles struck the capital again later in the morning. Pedestrians huddled for shelter at the entrance of metro stations and inside parking garages. By mid-morning, Ukraine's defense ministry said Russia had fired 75 cruise missiles and Ukraine's air defenses had shot down 41 of them. Kyiv City Police said at least 5 people had been killed and 12 wounded in the capital. Security camera footage posted online showed a cloud of shrapnel and flame engulfing a glass-bottomed footbridge across parkland in the city center, one of Kyiv's most popular tourist sites. The bridge appeared to have been empty at the time. The air raid sirens do not subside throughout Ukraine. Unfortunately, there are dead and wounded. He later said the strikes had 2 main targets: energy infrastructure and people. Such a time and such targets were specially chosen to cause as much damage as possible. There was no immediate word from Moscow on what it was targeting. Russia denies deliberately targeting civilians. At one of Kyiv's busiest road junctions, a massive crater had been blown in the intersection. Buildings were damaged, and 2 cars and a van near the crater were completely wrecked, blacked, and pitted from shrapnel. Windows had been blown out of buildings at Kyiv's main Taras Shevchenko University. National Guard troops in full combat gear and carrying assault rifles were lined up outside an education union building. The strikes came 2 days after an explosion damaged the only bridge over the Kerch Strait to the Crimea Peninsula, which Mr. Putin on Monday called out as an act of terrorism aimed at destroying critically important civilian infrastructure. This was devised, carried out, and ordered by the Ukrainian Special Service, he said in a video on the Kremlin's Telegram channel. Ukraine has not claimed responsibility for the blast on the bridge, but has celebrated it. Some Russian officials demanded a swift response from the Kremlin ahead of a meeting of Mr. Putin's Security Council on Monday. The bridge, which Mr. Putin personally opened, is a major supply route for Russian forces in southern Ukraine and a symbol of Russia's control of Crimea, the peninsula it proclaimed annexed after its troops seized it in 2014. Russia has faced major setbacks on the battlefield since the start of September, with Ukrainian forces bursting through the front lines and recapturing territory in the northeast and the south. Mr. Putin responded to the losses by ordering a mobilization of hundreds of thousands of reservists, proclaiming the annexation of occupied territory and threatening repeatedly to use nuclear weapons. Ukraine's top brass released a statement that said that the country's air defenses took down at least 40 incoming air attacks, but several dozen more got through. Ukrainian officials blame Iranian-made suicide drones launched from Belarus and the Black Sea for many of the attacks. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has allowed Russia to use his country as a staging ground for attacks on Ukraine, and after today's attacks, requested further assistance from the Russian government in anticipation of Ukrainian retaliation. Russian state media reported to have only attacked Ukraine's military infrastructure. "We warned Zelensky that Russia hadn't really started yet," wrote Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov, a loyalist to Russian President Vladimir Putin. "Run, Zelensky, run, and never look back," he added.